Hi, you're watching a very specially recorded session of Agenda AWANI. When I get out of the studio, that means I'm chasing after very important stories and people. And I'm here thanks to Sarawak Energy at SAREF, Sustainability and Renewable Energy Forum 2019. This is the first time. And somebody who I met at the very cold, snowy place called Davos, and now bringing him down to the great rainforest area of Borneo, Tom Szaky, the founder and CEO of Loop-TerraCycle. Thank you so much for making time to come to Kuching, Sarawak, Tom.
Oh, it's absolutely my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
Is this your first time?
First time in this in Borneo.
Correct,
Absolutely,
correct.
yes. Yeah, super excited.
I have a personal intention for this interview that I want to disclose upfront: transparency. I want to lobby TerraCycle to be in Malaysia. They're close, they're in Thailand. So this is the resume for that to happen. Tom, we talk a lot about circular economy. I'm going to define circular economy for those who might have forgotten it. It's very simple. What's the point of having renewable energy if we feed the energy into the old kind of economy that produce so much wastage and waste? You know, billions of tons of waste produced, and humanity don't even know how to really deal with the waste. And it's ending up in the natural ecosystem. Everybody would remember a picture of plastic in the stomach of a dead whale, or plastic straws coming out of the nostril of, you know, we call it pernu turtles here. So, and in the peninsula, many places that, as my father was driving along the beaches, I could see turtles. There's none now in all those places. So you take out garbage, and I still remember this phrase that you said to me, that what you do is the best business model because you take what no one else wants to take. Your resource materials are almost free, and in fact, people pay you to remove these things. So where have you been since then? Because you have introduced Loop. I remember that at the World Comic Forum in January, and I think it's in Paris and also New York.
That's right.
So how has it been? Mainstreaming, taking out waste, producing things that we can use again and again instead of products, packaging that we throw away.
Absolutely. So as you said, Loop, which is one of our new divisions at TerraCycle, launched, we debuted it at Davos just 11 months ago. And it became a sensation. It's actually the most reported on sustainability story of 2019 anywhere in the world. So we I think, touched a nerve. And the idea of Loop is simple. How do we think about a world back before 1950 when garbage didn't exist? You know, you were saying that, like, you know, here tribes don't even have the concept of a dustbin, you know, and the garbage really didn't exist until disposability was invented. So before disposability, people valued durability, long-lasting, you know, well-made goods. After this, what disposability brought and why it won, and is still winning today, is because of unbelievable convenience and affordability. Okay. And I think, you know, to your point, to mainstream the circular economy, which simply means not take, make, waste, but make and then use again and then use again and then use again, like nature, we need to honor the benefits of disposability, not ask people to sacrifice there, which is this unbelievable convenience and affordability, but also learn from the past where people valued durability and things lasting a long time. And the simple solution to all of this is what Loop is about, is to work with manufacturers to be able to shift the packaging from being, in the end, the property of the consumer, where the consumer will want to throw it away, and the company will want to make it cheap, which makes it less recyclable, to where it remains the property of the consumer product company, where their motivations, financial motivations, will shift to make it long-lasting, durable, reusable, and circular. And it's very similar to many countries have refillable beverage containers or beer bottles. But imagine that for everything you can imagine, from your shampoo to your laundry detergent, from your toothpaste to your diaper and packaged food and so on. And I'm very proud to say that, you know, since Davos, almost every major consumer product company in the world has joined Loop. In fact, you know, Greenpeace put out a list of the top 10 polluters in the world, and all 10 of them are partners of the platform. And it's also a partner with many major retailers. So consumers can go into these retailers, these big mainstream retailers, buy the mainstream products they already love, And when they're done, they can drop it off at any other mainstream retailer in the Loop platform, get their deposits back, and the packaging, instead of becoming garbage, is cleaned and refilled. And it's, as you said, live in France, live in the US. In March, we launch in the UK. In May, we launch in Canada. October, Japan, which is the closest to this region for now. Then November, Germany, and then Australia in Q1 of 2021. And then from there, we'll look at more markets, including hopefully here in Malaysia one day.
I want to rewind a bit to the concept of recycling. The last time a nationwide consciousness was 3R, right? This recycling principle. But the problem is the supply chain. And many recycling hubs or centers in neighborhoods, communities, if you walk past them, many are not active anymore.
That's right.
So what happened to that? And how can we reuse or rejuvenate that consciousness now with the prevalence of social media, with the dying whales and turtles, to have a new attitude and mindset shift?
You know, I think there's a crazy situation that's happening globally now. If you look at the past 2 years, people all over the world have woken up to the crisis of garbage. Really in the past 2 years. You know, you see the turtle with the straw up its nose, and suddenly plastic straws are being banned. You see animals eating plastic bags in the ocean because they think it's jellyfish. Suddenly you see more laws coming. So there's an absolute waste crisis that everyone seems to be aware of. You know, today if you ask someone here in Malaysia or anywhere in the world, are they aware of ocean plastic? They'll likely say yes. But 2-3 years ago, they wouldn't have known the issue. While this whole crisis is happening, the recycling industry is collapsing. This is the crazy part. It should be able to ride the wave, because crisis is a great opportunity for the people who can solve for the crisis. So like for TerraCycle, we've tripled in size in the past 2 years. But an average recycling companies are dying. For example, in Japan, 20% of recycling companies have gone bankrupt in the past 2 years. In the United States, half of what was being recycled before is not recycled anymore. The main reason for this macroeconomic collapse in recycling is, one, oil is cheap. And if oil is cheap, that sets the value for the output of recycling centers as to be low. And it makes it very difficult to make profit because you're selling it in competitive nature with virgin plastic. The second is that end markets that used to take the waste, not dumping, by the way, this was taking the waste to make new products, like China as the biggest, but now other countries in Southeast Asia, Indonesia, I believe Malaysia may as well, have banned the import of these materials, which means that if you're a German or a Canadian or a Brazilian recycler, you're going to have a very hard time selling the material, which means you recycle less. And then the third issue, which many people have not spoken about, is the quality of our waste. From a recycler's point of view, is going down. Because packaging is constantly becoming lighter and lighter. Here in Malaysia, you experience that shampoos come in sachets, and everything is very light. Now, as you make packaging lighter, it becomes more complicated, which means more money has to be spent to process it, to access value. And because it's lighter, there's less value, weight to be able to collect. So it makes it even more difficult. And those three things together are compounding to make it very difficult for traditional recyclers to succeed.
You mentioned that recycling industry is going down, but TerraCycle is going up.
Yes.
So what's the silver lining we can pull from there? Because it's no longer just individuals. Policymakers, government, local authorities, big industries have got to make that leadership decision.
Absolutely. So why TerraCycle has succeeded while the general industry has failed is we try to do everything that the general industry doesn't do. So a typical recycler, if you take this, say, glass cup, is only going to value the glass in the cup, and their cost will be collecting this and processing it into a sellable material. What TerraCycle says is, wait, are there other ways we can generate value? Are there other ways we can pull money, you know, to be able to recycle those things that in and of itself don't have economic value? So it could be working with a coffee shop to recycle their coffee cups to attract consumers to that coffee shop. It could be working with a brand to make their package recyclable so more people prefer brand A versus brand B, and all these different aspects. And this creates actually robust economic opportunities. It's also to create new models, like you had mentioned Loop, which is to say, how do we create a waste management solution that doesn't require recycling and doesn't require incineration or landfill and only requires reuse? And so that's where we float to try to inspire different ways of thinking, because in the end, we need business models. Today in a capitalist world, whether we agree with capitalism or not, we need business models to solve issues if we want to act in the short term. Now, the bigger piece to anyone out there, who's watching, is nothing that we're speaking about, whether it's TerraCycle or anything else, is the solution. Because even if you move to a completely circular economy, no matter what, running a circle requires energy. Yes. Now, of course, the goal, as you look at the 3 Rs, reduce, reuse, recycle, recycling moves a linear economy to a big circle. Okay, so that's better, but there's many steps and many processes that require energy. The next part in the 3 Rs goes from recycling to reuse. Okay. Reuse, like Loop, makes the circle smaller, but still requires energy to transport and clean. The most important thing to anyone out there is the reduce, is stop buying things. Because in the end, whether you care about deforestation, which is of course a big issue here, linked to palm oil and cattle grazing, whether you care about the fact that half the diversity of animals has disappeared, air quality, water quality, garbage, doesn't matter what environmental topic you care about, everything is linked to the act of buying things. And so if, as individuals, we change our relationship to consumption and buy maybe higher quality, fewer items, then we can solve almost every environmental issue, even if we don't understand it.
Okay. If you don't know about circular economy, don't be alarmed. You can still, eavesdrop on this conversation if you don't want to hear it directly. But it's very simple. Just Google Tom Szaky or TerraCycle. There's even a headline saying, from a refugee to a millionaire something.
Yeah,
That's what I remember. That's you. A Princeton dropout.
Yeah.
Tom, like every great, all the technology founders, they all drop out from Ivy League universities. Tom is one, but he's doing something that we in Asia can directly relate. Because when his services come here, you could really see the difference. I'm still lobbying Tom for that. Thailand is close.
Yes.
I have Thai blood in me, so we're close. But I'm going to go to consumption now. I remember watching one of your talks on YouTube where you said that I almost interpret it as the devil's in the consumption of things.
Yes.
Because we buy and buy even though we don't need it.
Yes.
But because it's easy, it's convenient, it's cheap, it's affordable, and it's reliable, we want it, we get it. That's why you go to the closest 24-hour convenience store. However, how do you shift this?
Yeah.
There's this great debate. We don't want to be caught in between capitalism, anti-capitalism, or everything else.
Yes.
We just want to be in the middle and say, look, I remember when we were talking about the FMCGs and the containers of shampoos or whatever, 3 years ago, nobody was much crying about the whales and the dolphins and the turtles. We already had that conversation in Davos. I recorded it. And you were taking out plastic from the ocean, among the first to do that.
Yes.
And before we go further into consumption, just to shock you a bit, if you Google, you would know that plastic in the ocean will move according to the currents, and then they'll be stuck in this big loop of a current cycle.
Yes.
You've watched it firsthand. Please share that with us.
Yeah, absolutely. So ocean plastic is a phenomenal issue. And today, just to put it to scale, 25% of the plastic in the world ends up in our oceans. 1 in 4 bottles anywhere in the world ends up in the ocean. Now, today, a lot of the blame, I would say, is projected to Southeast Asia. If you look at global media, everyone's saying, oh, it's all coming from this region of the world. That may be accurate today. However, up until 1980, New York City was dumping 100% of its garbage 10 miles or 15, 16 kilometers outside into the ocean. So this is a global responsibility overall. I mean, everyone was throwing garbage in the ocean because no one cares about the ocean. No one owns the ocean, right? So it's an easy place to throw things. Now, what happens with this is that the plastic, and this is why plastic is the key issue, because if you throw glass, it's basically converted sand. It's going to come to the bottom and not going to create too much harm. Metals as well will sink down, not create too much harm. But plastics degrade into microparticles, and those get consumed by animals. And the reason you keep seeing it in the larger animals, like sharks and whales and birds, is it bioaccumulates. If a bird eats a fish filled with plastic, the fish will digest in the stomach, but the plastic will remain. So things accumulate into larger and larger animals. In fact, when we're drinking water right now, anywhere in the world, you and I are drinking microplastic. So it's also accumulating in us. And so this is a phenomenally big issue. All the cleanup efforts, including TerraCycle's efforts, are focused on what can float. 95% of the plastic sinks to the bottom. And there's no work on that today, because can you imagine how do you clean up the bottom of an ocean? So, for example, in Thailand, we just entered there with the TerraCycle Foundation. We're doing it through an NGO. And our primary work in Thailand is working with great sponsors like the PepsiCo Foundation and others who are funding us to clean up the rivers in Bangkok and other locations before the waste ends up in the ocean. So we have TerraCycle river cleanup devices out there floating and many more being deployed. The reason today that a lot of the waste comes from Southeast Asia is because there is not yet formal waste management. People maybe throw it in their backyard, then the rainy season comes, it washes it away, goes into canals, from canals into rivers, and rivers into our ocean. Now, that's a big concern. And yes, we can work on trying to clean it up, but all the cleanup efforts, including ours, maybe clean up what goes in the ocean, all, let's say all the efforts together clean up what goes in 1 hour at the most, and that's optimistic. So I think what we need to do is the point you said earlier is how do we turn off the tap? And every environmental issue, one of the challenges, especially if you're in the communication world, communicating environmental issues to the public is very difficult because it's incredibly complex. How can you link buying a hamburger or a bottle of shampoo to deforestation here in Borneo? That's a very complicated topic and will take people paying attention for many minutes to be able to understand that. The beauty of garbage is that it's a black and white simple issue. That's why people have woken up to it, because one photo says it all. You don't have to, you just show a turtle with a straw in its nose and a 5-year-old will understand without any commentary or anything. And so I think we need to, in this space, simplify environmental communication so that it's easy to understand. Even at Davos, critics of global warming would say, how can there be climate change when we're going to be skiing today? Which is an insane argument, but it works for them. So, look, everything links back to the idea of buying things. And it's very hard for me to sit here, living in the Western world, saying, don't buy stuff. And I'm a hypocrite too. I buy things. The way to shift this while maintaining the economy and creating, I think, a better standard of living is shift from buying cheap stuff that breaks, that doesn't last a long time, to beautiful, durable items. So, for example, 100 years ago, a Western middle-income woman, say living in Paris, would buy 2 garments a year and use them on average 20 years. Relative to her income, these garments were exceptionally expensive, so they were beautiful, and they would mend them and fix them, because you would mend and fix beautiful things. Today, that same person buys 66 garments a year. That's the average in Western Europe, and here's the crazy part, uses them on average 3 times before disposal. And they would never bother mending because it's super cheap. It's fast fashion and all this stuff. So I think if we shift our consumption to focus on beautiful, durable, high-quality things, we'll spend the same amount of money fueling the economy, we'll have a better experience, we'll be motivated to repair and reuse and pass them along, versus the opposite, which is fund super cheap stuff that becomes garbage and actually doesn't make our lives so nice.
How is that... what's the data coming back from the Loop experience? Because if my Häagen-Dazs, I can say Häagen-Dazs because I saw the brand and the Loop initiative, but it's not available in Malaysia yet. I don't have to throw the 1 pint container, whatever. It's a nice, customized to me, like my name there, and the motif of orang-utans, for example. And then every time, I just pay for the service to refill it. But at the initial cost, the first time I engage that service, the cost is going to be a bit higher because of that new container that is more beautiful and durable. So how has the Loop experience been?
So absolutely. So what Loop does is it works with major consumer product companies like Nestle, who's Häagen-Dazs, but everyone else, to create durable, reusable versions of their products. So instead of ice cream being packaged in paper, as it is today, it's packaged in beautiful stainless steel, which keeps your ice cream frozen longer, has all these nice extra benefits, it's incredibly beautiful, and reusable. Now, on your first purchase, you put a deposit on the good, and you pay about the same for the ice cream. Then when you give back the ice cream, you get your deposit back, and then if you buy a new one, you do that again. Now, that means that at the very first moment, it's a little more expensive because you have the deposit, then it neutralizes to be the same price. Now, in Western markets, where we're live today, which is North America, Western Europe, and soon launching in Japan and Oceania, their consumers seem to be not sensitive to the deposit price. I was actually very surprised. People have no sensitivity to the deposit because they know they're going to get the money back. And what they want to hear is that the content will be about the same price, which it is. Now, that's for what's called a consumable, you know, like a window cleaner or orange juice. But what's really exciting is in durable goods, like T-shirts, baby toys. There, the consumer, let's say it's a $10 T-shirt, they pay a $5 fee to use it and a $5 deposit, which means it costs the same, but when they give it back, because maybe their child grew out of it, or maybe a toy their child doesn't enjoy anymore, they get the deposit back, which means they would spend about half. So they spend the same on first purchase and about half on the second purchase. So, for example, in the Western markets, we're starting with the consumables because that they can afford it, and because it's a huge contributor to waste. But as we enter regions like Southeast Asia, we will likely start with the hard goods because that way consumers immediately pay less, immediately pay the same and then end up paying less. And the beautiful business model of this is that it sets the motivations in a way where I don't have to go to these companies and tell them do this because it's the right thing. That's because that's a very challenging thing to do. I can go there and appeal to their basic economic goals, which is make the consumers love the products more. For example, if the packaging is an asset, make it designed to be long-lasting. That's an economic principle, not a sustainability principle. So, for example, in clothing companies, today clothing companies make only 1 point of profit, the difference between what it costs to make an item and what they sold it for. But in Loop, they get a profit every time it goes around. So now they're financially motivated to make that T-shirt not break, not deteriorate, because they'll make profit every time it can cycle. So in other words, an infinitely durable product is infinitely profitable.
A few minutes left, but I have to make this locally relevant. So Sarawak is one of the biggest producers in Southeast Asia of cheap, renewable energy from hydropower dams. So we know the circular economy needs energy. They have it. So, but how do we make the supply chain? I want to tap into your expertise. Having said that, Tom, he always thinks ahead. I'm thinking that we have a local concept because of the Muslim community, for example, of halal. And halal is not just about slaughtering animals the right way. Halalan toyiban, in Arabic, it means everything is clean. So we can ingrain all this concept into the circular economy and the loop cycle, because if it's clean, then I have to innovate somewhere where the biggest dirt that you can find is a dirt that you have to cleanse well, like from a dog or from a pig for the Muslim. But, if I take dirt and I make it into a solution that cleans that automatically, so it can be used for Muslim and non-Muslim because it's halal and tayyibat. How do we move this concept together? Because it needs to work in ideas and have to work across all communities.
Absolutely. I think this is where, for example, when we set up our cleaning facilities for Loop, no matter what we're cleaning, they're all certified according to all the different both hygiene and religious standards. So whether it's kosher or organic certified, or all the different certifications, again, both religious certifications as well as food certifications. These are very, very important. And for us, one of the real privileges in working with these large major producers, like your Nestle's and Coke and Pepsi and so on, is that they're helping us set the standards for cleaning at the very, very highest level. So this is a funny part. We said that everyone's comfortable with reuse. The way, if I was at a restaurant, the way this cup would be cleaned would be to go to the back, and then someone, just wearing normal clothes with dirty hands would quickly rinse it out, maybe use soap, who knows, and it would be sent to the next consumer, right? That's classic, even a high-end restaurant would clean that way. If you come into a Loop cleaning facility, it looks like you've come into a silicon chip factory. People wearing personal protective equipment. The air gets changed, the piping gets changed, every different item that is cleaned. It's cleaned at levels that would be similar to how your dentist cleans the instruments they use in your mouth when they do a dental cleaning. So it moves the standards even higher to potentially what disposability can bring. And this is the important thing to note. Disposable packaging is not sterile. It's not. It's covered in dust. It's covered in microorganisms. And every product we buy, whether it's shampoo or orange juice, has a standard level of acceptable microorganisms. In fact, durable packaging can become cleaner than disposable. And no matter what, the key is elevating the experience. What I really believe firmly in, it's not about asking consumers to sacrifice, because if I do, I'm only speaking to 1% of the people out there. It's instead playing into consumer desires of better, cheaper, more beautiful, more functional. None of those are sustainability, by the way, and giving them that within a more sustainable ecosystem, which is what Loop tries to accomplish.
Lastly, we have a chance to convince the decision makers in Sarawak, in Malaysia, maybe even this region, what would they do that will make you want to set up the system here?
It's simple. For Loop to come to Malaysia, we need the largest retail chain here to want to embed it into its ecosystem. It was Aeon who brought Loop to Japan. It's Woolworths who's bringing Loop to Australia. It's Carrefour who brings Loop to France. We need a major retailer to say, we want to take the lead, and we want to embed this into our physical stores and digital stores as well.
And imagine if the local authorities facilitate the mobility of the goods, of the garbage, for example, within an ecosystem.
Only helps.
Right?
Only helps.
So thank you so much, Tom
Thank
Szaky,
you.
for flying all the way to Kuching, Sarawak, right here. And you only get this because of Sarawak Energy and Astro AWANI looking at all our future and thinking that we only have one ecosystem, one place, and we are one world. So let's save it. And the technology and the service is already here. So we'll see you again very soon. Thank you to SAREF 2019, and I'll see you again very, very soon. Goodbye.